Tonight, we are not rushing anywhere. There are no alarms, no notifications, no deadlines. Just the slow, quiet turning of time. Imagine lying in a warm bed while soft rain taps against the window. A candle flickers on the nightstand. And somewhere, in the gentle distance, a story begins to unfold. Not a loud story. Not a dramatic one. Just a quiet walk through forgotten empires, through letters written by candlelight, through the fall of ancient walls and the footsteps of warriors who lived by a code of silence. Why do we still tell these tales, centuries later? And what happens when we stop trying to learn and simply listen? Before we drift deeper into the dark, take a moment to subscribe and like this video. Then close your eyes. The history is ready. And so are you. He was born on a warm day in July, more than 2,000 years ago, in a city of stone and marble, of crowded streets and whispering politicians. Rome was not yet an empire. It was a republic, loud and ambitious, where men fought with words before they fought with swords. Young Caesar grew up in a modest household. His family was noble but not rich. His father died when he was only 16, leaving him the head of a household far too early. But Caesar had something that could not be taught. He had presence. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel both seen and measured. When he was still a young man, a dictator named Sulla ordered him to divorce his wife. Caesar refused. That refusal could have cost him his life. He went into hiding, moving from village to village, sleeping in haylofts and barns. But Sulla, for reasons no one fully understood, eventually let him live. And then Sulla said something strange. He looked at the young Caesar and said, "In that man, there are many Mariuses." Marius was a famous general, a man of ambition and fire. Sulla was warning Rome. But Rome was not listening. Caesar left Rome for a time. He joined the army. He fought in distant lands. He proved he was brave, sometimes too brave. One story tells of a voyage across the Aegean Sea. Pirates captured his ship. They demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed at them. He told them to ask for 50. He lived among the pirates for weeks, joking with them, reciting poetry, promising that when he was free, he would return and crucify them. They thought he was joking. He was not. After the ransom was paid, he raised a small fleet, hunted the pirates down, and kept his word. But he cut their throats before the crucifixion, a small mercy. That story spread through Rome like smoke through a crowded room. This was a man who did not forget. A man who did not bluff. Back in Rome, Caesar climbed the political ladder. He was charming, eloquent, and willing to spend money he did not have to win friends. He became Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome, a position of influence, not just power. And then, he made a deal. In secret, he formed an alliance with two other powerful men. Pompey, the great general, and Crassus, the richest man in Rome. They called it the First Triumvirate, though it was never official. Just 3 men who agreed to help each other. With their backing, Caesar won the highest office in Rome, the consulship. And then he asked for something else. He asked to be given command of Gaul, a wild, dangerous land that would become his legend. Gaul was not a vacation. It was a place of dense forests, fierce tribes, and bitter winters. Caesar spent nearly a decade there, fighting, negotiating, building. He wrote about his campaigns in a book called Commentaries on the Gallic War. But those pages were not just reports. They were letters to Rome, written to keep his name alive, to shape his image, to remind the people that he was out there, bleeding for the Republic. He crossed rivers no Roman had crossed. He marched his legions through snow and mud. He laid siege to hill forts and burned villages. His soldiers loved him. He paid them well, shared their dangers, and never asked them to do anything he would not do himself. And when the final rebellion came, when a chieftain named Vercingetorix united the tribes against him, Caesar did not retreat. He built walls around the enemy fortress and then built a second wall around that to keep relief forces out. 2 walls, 2 enemies, 1 army. When the battle ended, Vercingetorix laid his sword at Caesar's feet. Gaul was Rome's. And Caesar was a hero. But heroes, in Rome, were also threats. And across the river Rubicon, a choice was waiting. A line drawn in the water. A gamble that would change everything. The river Rubicon was behind him now. Caesar had crossed, and the world would never be the same. But let us leave ancient Rome for a moment, let the marble dust settle, and drift across the ocean to another nation tearing itself apart. Not with whispers, but with cannons and letters and the soft, terrible sound of boots marching through mud. This is the story of the American Civil War, a war that should never have happened, and yet, perhaps, could never have been avoided. Before the first shot was fired, the seeds of division had already grown deep. The North was becoming a world of factories, railroads, and crowded cities. The South was different. Its wealth came from cotton, from vast fields worked by enslaved people. Two economies, two cultures, two ideas of what America should be. And as the country expanded westward, the question followed like a shadow. Would new states allow slavery or ban it? Each answer pulled the nation further apart. There were compromises, temporary bandages. The Missouri Compromise, the Compromise of 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Each one tried to balance free and slave states, but none could heal the wound. In Kansas, violence broke out between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers. They called it Bleeding Kansas. A preview of horrors to come. In Congress, a senator from South Carolina beat a fellow senator unconscious on the Senate floor. America was not arguing anymore. It was breaking. Then came the election of 1860. Abraham Lincoln won without carrying a single Southern state. To the South, that was the end. South Carolina seceded first. Others followed. They formed a new country, the Confederate States of America. They elected Jefferson Davis as their president. They wrote a constitution that explicitly protected slavery. And Lincoln, in his first inaugural address, spoke not with anger but with sorrow. "We are not enemies, but friends," he said. "Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection." But words could not hold the Union together. On April 12, 1861, Confederate cannons opened fire on Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. The bombardment lasted 34 hours. No one died in the fighting, but the line had been crossed. Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to put down the rebellion. The South saw that as an act of war. 4 more states seceded. The Civil War had begun. At first, many thought it would be short. A few weeks, perhaps one decisive battle. Young men rushed to enlist, eager for glory. Spectators brought picnic baskets to watch the first major battle at Bull Run. They were wrong. The war lasted 4 years. It would claim over 600,000 lives, more than any American war before or since. It would be fought in cornfields and forests, in rivers and on mountains. And it would be written in letters, by candlelight, by boys who would never go home. Those letters, those soft whispers from the edge of death, they hold the truest history. Not the dates, not the generals, but the quiet ache of a soldier who still remembered the smell of his mother's kitchen. And as the smoke cleared over another battlefield, a different kind of fall was waiting. Not in America, but across the sea, in an ancient city that had once ruled the world. Constantinople. Constantinople. The name itself sounds like a closing door, like the echo of footsteps in a cathedral that has no roof. By the mid-15th century, the Byzantine Empire had shrunk to little more than this one city. Great palaces crumbled. Entire districts stood empty, overgrown with weeds. The population had dwindled to perhaps 50,000, a ghost of the 500,000 that once filled its streets. And yet, the city still glowed. Its golden domes still caught the morning light. Its walls, the legendary Theodosian walls, still stood, 3 layers of stone and moat that had repelled every invader for 1,000 years. The man who sat on the throne was Constantine XI Palaiologos, the last Roman emperor. He ruled not with gold or legions, but with dignity and resolve. His treasury was empty. His army numbered fewer than 7,000, a handful of Greek soldiers, Venetian mercenaries, and volunteers who refused to abandon the city. But Constantine did not flee. He walked the walls at night, speaking to sentries, sharing their bread. He prayed in the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia, where the candles burned low and the incense hung in the air like a held breath. To the east, a young sultan watched. Mehmed II was only 21 years old, but his ambition was ancient. He wanted Constantinople. Not just for its wealth, but for its name, its prophecy, its place in the world. He had built massive cannons, some so large they required dozens of oxen to move. He had gathered an army of over 80,000 men, including his elite guard, the Janissaries. And he had a plan. In April 1453, the cannons began to speak. Day after day, stone balls smashed against the Theodosian walls. The defenders worked through the night, filling breaches with rubble and wooden beams. They hung wet hides and bales of wool to absorb the shock. They poured boiling oil on the soldiers who tried to scale the broken stone. For weeks, the walls held. Then Mehmed did something audacious. He dragged his ships over land, on greased logs, right into the Golden Horn harbor, bypassing the great chain that protected the city. The citizens of Constantinople woke to see Ottoman warships floating where no ships should be. Panic spread like fire through dry grass. The city was surrounded. And yet, Constantine did not surrender. On the last night, inside Hagia Sophia, Orthodox and Catholic Christians worshipped together for the first time in centuries. They had been divided by theology, by politics, by pride. But in the face of extinction, unity mattered more than doctrine. The candles flickered. The incense rose. The emperor, dressed in plain armor without royal insignia, mounted the walls. There would be no sleep that night, only waiting. And when the dawn broke, the final assault began. The cannons roared. The soldiers charged. And a small gate, forgotten in the chaos, was left unlocked. That tiny mistake, a door left unbolted, would end an empire. But before we reach that moment, we must walk through the smoke, beside the last emperor, and feel the weight of 1,000 years pressing down on his shoulders. The small gate was left unlocked. A mistake so small, a door left unbolted, and the Ottoman soldiers slipped through. They raised their flag on an inner tower, and the city's heart broke. Emperor Constantine, refusing to flee, took off his purple cloak and charged into the fighting as a common soldier. He was never seen again. Constantinople fell, and the last echo of ancient Rome faded into the smoke. But let us leave that haunted city now. Let its stones settle beneath the weight of history. We have one more journey tonight, one more shadow to walk beside. The samurai of Japan. Long ago, on an island shaped like a dragon's spine, the emperor in Kyoto ruled in name but not in power. The land was divided among warlords, daimyo, who collected their own taxes and raised their own armies. And those armies were made of samurai, warriors sworn to serve their lords with absolute loyalty. They were not born heroes. They were born into a class, trained from childhood in the way of the bow and the sword. They learned to endure cold, hunger, and pain without complaint. They learned to ride horses, to shoot arrows from a gallop, and to draw a katana in a single, fluid motion. The samurai lived by an unwritten code called bushido, the way of the warrior. It demanded courage, honesty, respect, and above all, loyalty. To fail your lord was to lose your honor. To lose your honor was to lose everything. Some samurai chose seppuku, ritual suicide, to restore their family's name. They would kneel on a cloth, compose a death poem, and drive a short blade into their own abdomen. A friend would stand behind them, ready to strike off their head at the first sign of agony. It was not brutality. It was dignity. A final act of control in a world ruled by chaos. The samurai carried two swords, a long katana and a short wakizashi. The katana was said to hold the warrior's soul. Forged over weeks by master smiths, folded hundreds of times, it was a weapon of art as much as war. But the samurai also studied poetry, calligraphy, and the tea ceremony. They sat in meditation, seeking stillness beneath the surface. A warrior who could not control his mind was a warrior already dead. In the 13th century, they faced the Mongol invasions, and when two typhoons destroyed the enemy fleets, they called them kamikaze, the divine wind. They believed the gods were on their side. But time changes everything. In the 1600s, Japan entered a long peace under the Tokugawa shogunate. The samurai, no longer needed on battlefields, became bureaucrats, scholars, administrators. They still wore their swords, but the swords grew heavy with disuse. Then, in the 19th century, American warships arrived. The shogunate fell. The emperor was restored. The samurai class was abolished. They were forbidden to carry swords in public. Their stipends disappeared. Some resisted, fighting in the Satsuma Rebellion, the last stand of the old warriors. They lost. But the samurai did not vanish. Their spirit, their discipline, their quiet loyalty to purpose, flowed into modern Japan. You can still see it in the way a tea master pours hot water, in the way a student bows to a teacher, in the way a swordsman stands perfectly still before a strike. They are gone, but not gone. Like a stone dropped into a still pond, the ripples have never stopped. Let those ripples spread now, soft and endless, as the last samurai fades into the cherry blossoms. The stories are over. The only thing left is your breath, slow and steady. Good night. The samurai have faded into the cherry blossoms, their swords returned to the earth, their banners folded and stored in chests that no one opens anymore. But something lingers. Not a ghost, not a curse, but a feeling. The way a room feels after a guest has left, still warm, still carrying the echo of their voice. That is what history leaves behind. Not lessons, not warnings, just echoes. And tonight, you have walked through some of them. You have stood beside a river called the Rubicon, watching a man in a muddy cloak whisper a gamble that would change the world. You have knelt in a candlelit room, reading a letter written by a boy who would never see his mother again. You have climbed the walls of Constantinople, feeling the stone tremble under cannon fire, and you have watched the last emperor disappear into smoke. You have sat in silence with a samurai, watching him pour tea with hands that could draw blood in a breath. These are not facts to memorize. They are rooms to rest in. History, when you stop trying to master it, becomes something else. A bed. A blanket. A soft voice in the dark. It does not demand that you remember dates or names. It only asks that you listen, and perhaps, that you feel a little less alone. Because the people who came before us, they also lay down at night, wondering if the morning would bring joy or sorrow. They also closed their eyes, hoping for rest. They also dreamed. And sometimes, in the quiet space between sleeping and waking, we can hear them. Not as words, but as a kind of warmth. A reassurance that we are part of something long and slow and still moving. So let the empires crumble. Let the swords rust. Let the letters fade to dust. You are here, in a warm bed, with the soft sound of rain on the window, or the hum of a fan, or the quiet nothing of a room asleep. The history is over. The only thing left is your breath, slow and steady. The only thing left is the dark, gentle and safe. Close your eyes now. The stories will still be here tomorrow. But for now, you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to forget. You are allowed to simply be, without purpose, without achievement, without the weight of anything but the blanket over your shoulders. Sleep. The night is long. And you are exactly where you belong. You are exactly where you belong. The blanket has settled around you like a second skin. The room is dark, but not the kind of dark that frightens. The kind of dark that holds you, like a hand you have known forever. Outside, if you listen very closely, you can hear the world still turning. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just the soft whisper of wind through trees, or the distant rumble of a train that is not your concern, or perhaps nothing at all. Silence is also a kind of music. And tonight, silence is the only instrument. Think of all the people who have lain in darkness before you. Soldiers in muddy trenches, counting stars they might never see again. Emperors in silk sheets, staring at painted ceilings, wondering if history would remember them kindly. Mothers in one-room cottages, listening to their children breathe, grateful for another night without fever. They were all here, in the dark, just like you. Their hearts beat. Their minds wandered. They reached for sleep the way a thirsty man reaches for water. And sometimes, sleep came. Sometimes, it did not. But they survived the night, and so will you. This is the secret that history does not shout. It does not matter how much you conquer, how much you write, how many walls you build. In the end, we all lie down. We all close our eyes. We all hope for morning. The great arc of human ambition, the wars, the treaties, the love affairs, the betrayals, it all comes back to this. A single person, in a quiet room, waiting for sleep. That is not a sad thought. It is a tender one. It means that beneath all our striving, We are soft. We are fragile. We are allowed to rest. So let the stories fade now. Let Caesar's dice rest at the bottom of the Rubicon. Let the Civil War letters turn to ash in a forgotten drawer. Let the stones of Constantinople sink deeper into the earth. Let the samurai's sword hang still above the hearth. They have done their work. They have kept you company through the dark hours. Now they are as tired as you are. And they, too, deserve to rest. There is nothing more to say. No more facts, no more dates, no more echoes. Just you, and the night, and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Inhale. Exhale. The story is over. But the night is not. There is still time for dreaming. So let go. Let the weight of the day slip off your shoulders like a coat you no longer need. Let your mind wander where it will. No need to follow. No need to remember. Just be. Just rest. Good night.